Previously on Stranger Things. In a flashback to 1979, we see Dr. Brenner getting ready to go to work at Hawkins' lab, which is occupied by many children who have extraordinary powers. But something goes wrong and Brenner wakes up to find mangled bodies everywhere with only one person left standing: 11. Jumping forward to 1986 in Lenora Hills, California, Will, 11, Jonathan and their new friend Argyle are settling into their new surroundings, under the watchful eye of Joyce, who has started a job working from home. Though it is soon apparent that 11 is not fitting in quite as well as everyone else and is consistently picked on by other kids. However, 11 doesn't let Mike know any of this and the letters they're sending each other. Mike remains in Hawkins with Nancy and the rest of the gang. Dustin is staying in touch with his long-distance girlfriend Susie, along with Steve, Robin, Max and Lucas, who are all returning for another school year. Lucas has joined the basketball team and has befriended the team captain Jason and his group of jock friends. During a basketball game, Jason professes his love for his girlfriend Chrissy, and Robin appears to have feelings for fellow band member Vicky. After the game, Lucas chooses a basketball game over the Dungeons & Dragons meeting known as the Hellfire Club, leaving Mike and Dustin one player short. Things are also awkward between Lucas and Max. Max hears Chrissy in the bathroom being sick, and we see that Chrissy is experiencing hallucinations of the Upside Down. Or are they? We meet the leader of the Hellfire Club, Eddie Munson, who is no friend of the jocks. Nancy is busy working on her newspaper with fellow reporter Fred. Chrissy leaves school grounds and heads into the forest, where she sees a grandfather clock extruding out of a tree, but is interrupted by Eddie, who is selling her drugs, much to his surprise as she is a model student. Back in California, 11's bullying is escalating and leads to 11 attempting to use her powers against the main bully, Angela, leading to further ridicule. Joyce receives a suspicious parcel in the mail which contains a Russian doll. Unsure what to do, she calls Murray for advice, who tells her there's probably something inside the doll. Scared that it may be dangerous, Joyce smashes the doll open from a distance and finds a note inside saying Hopper is alive. Mike and Dustin found their third player in Lucas's sister Erica, and during the D&D session the players are introduced to a villain named Vecna, who the players defeat whilst Lucas's team wins the basketball game. But Lucas doesn't have his usual friend group around him anymore, and spends the night partying with the jocks. Meanwhile, at Max's home she sees Eddie meeting Chrissy, who becomes possessed by an unknown creature who puts her in a trance. Eddie yells for Chrissy to wake up, but it's too late. The next day, police arrive at the scene and speak to Eddie's uncle, and there is no sign of Eddie anywhere, just Chrissy's mangled body. In California, Mike comes to visit 11, and there's an awkward tension between him and Will, but Mike isn't the only one coming to town. Lucas is feeling sorry for himself after partying too hard the night before, and the police arrive to talk to Jason. News of the apparent murder has reached Nancy and Fred, who decide to investigate, and Max talks to Dustin about what she saw the night before and Eddie running away. Dustin, being close friends with Eddie, doesn't believe that he could be the murderer and that there must be more to the story. Murray starts working with Joyce on figuring out the ransom note she received, and we see that Hopper survived the explosion and has since been tortured in a Russian prison. Mike, 11 and Will decide to go roller skating, and 11 is continuing to keep up the facade that she is fitting in with the kids from school, much to Will's dismay. The police tell Jason what has happened to his girlfriend Chrissy, and he wants vengeance. Dustin and Max recruit Steve and Robin and fill them in on what they think is going on. They then get to work on finding where Eddie may be. On their way to the crime scene, Fred starts experiencing some all too familiar hallucinations. 11's lies about the other kids from school begin to unravel as Angela publicly humiliates her, revealing the truth to Mike. Joyce and Murray decide to call the number on the ransom note, which is answered by a prison guard named Enzo, who asks for money for Hopper's release. The jocks begin planning their revenge on the primary suspect, Eddie, and the military begins an investigation of their own. Robin figures out a way to locate Eddie, and Nancy interviews Eddie's uncle, who mentions the similarities of the events to what happened to a family called the Creels. Nearby, Fred's hallucinations are worsening. The tension rises between Will and Mike, and it all becomes too much for 11, who attacks Angela for what she's done. Max and company find Eddie in an old boat shed and fill them in on what they know and how this could have happened. Fred is overcome by this unknown creature who appears all too familiar to the kids, a real-life Vecna, who resides in the attic of a house in the Upside Down surrounded by demo bats. The military pays Dr. Owens a visit as 11 has had a similar MO in the past and is likely to have more information, which he does not share. After a traumatic time at the skate rink, the kids return home and are greeted by Murray, and 11 is reminded of the massacre at Hawkins' lab. Lucas finds himself caught up in the Jock's plan to track down Eddie, who is still hiding out with the gang in the boat shed. Nancy is questioned about the events surrounding Fred's death before joining the rest of the gang to figure out how all this could happen. Mike and 11 fight as she feels she's nothing without her powers, and Mike disagrees, 11 then pointing out the fact that he never says that he loves her, but then the police arrive and take 11 away for assaulting Angela. Nancy is filled in on what is known so far, and Max recalls seeing Chrissy in the bathroom before her death. The gang split up to find out more information, and Nancy and Robin go to investigate the lead they have on the Creel family. Meanwhile, Vecna is on the prowl for more victims, and ominous gateways are appearing at the crime scenes. Jason starts threatening Eddie's friends to find out where he is, and 11 is processed at the police station before being taken away in a transport vehicle. Joyce and Murray fly to Russia in their quest to save Hopper, who is planning an escape of his own. Lucas sneaks away from the Jocks and warns Dustin of what they're planning to do to Eddie, and 11's transport is intercepted by Dr. Owens. Nancy and Robin review old newspaper clippings to see if there's any resemblance to what is going on, and find a reference to the Creel family. Victor Creel, the father of the family, is currently locked away in an asylum following the supernatural events that occurred to his family. Dr. Owens fills in 11 on what's going on in Hawkins and how they need to try to get her powers back for her to save the world once again. But time is running out as now Max is starting to experience hallucinations. Will, Jonathan and Mike are put under protection due to the dangers they may be facing, and 2 armed guards are posted in their house. Lucas catches up with Dustin and joins the crew in their investigation. Nancy and Robin fill them in on their findings, deciding they're going to visit Victor Creel in the asylum. Meanwhile, Max's hallucinations are starting to worsen. In Russia, we are introduced to Yuri, who agrees to assist them in their search for Hopper, who has made plans of his own with the prison guard Enzo. Victor Creel tells the story of his nightmares that surrounded the family, which ultimately led to the death of his wife and daughter, briefly mentioning that hearing a familiar song during the hallucinations managed to bring him back to reality. Will, Jonathan and Mike are attacked and their guards are overcome. They make a quick escape with one of the injured guards in Argyle's van. Yuri explains his plan to Joyce and Murray whilst Hopper hides away in a nearby building, but he is promptly caught and Yuri is revealed to have betrayed them to take them to the KGB. The gang goes to the cemetery for Max to visit Billy's grave, but when Steve goes to check on her, she has been possessed by Vecna and trapped inside the nightmare he's created. Robin contacts Dustin and lets him know that music may help break the curse, and they desperately attempt to snap Max out of the trance. The music playing reminds her of happier times and assists her in breaking free of Vecna's grasp. Still on the run, the guard passes away in the back of Argyle's van, and the military, finding letters between Mike and 11, are hot on their tail. 11 is taken to a compound in Nevada, where she's taken underground and introduced to the Nina Project, which is their attempt at returning 11's powers. But the project is run by an all-too-familiar face. Traumatized by memories of Dr. Brenner, or Papa as she calls him, 11 attempts to escape, but is incapacitated. Elsewhere, Hopper is brought back to the compound with now disgraced prison guard Enzo, and Yuri attempts to fly Joyce and Murray to the KGB. Max tries to remember details of what she saw whilst in Vecna's trance, and they piece together what appears to be the Creel household. 11 awakes to find herself in a memory from her childhood in the facility, and we are introduced to one of the orderlies, Peter, who seems to be her only ally in Hawkins' lab. It is then revealed that 11 is reliving her memories of her time in Hawkins' lab from inside the Nina device, which is being monitored by Dr. Brenner and Dr. Owens. The crew in the van has no choice but to bury the body of the guard in the desert, and Will seems to have something to say to Mike. The Hawkins crew arrive at the Creel house to see what they can find, and Lucas and Max's relationship sees a flicker of hope, but that's not the only thing that's flickering in this house. The kids at Hawkins' labs are being tested to determine the strength of their powers, and 11 finds herself continuing to have flashbacks of the events of the massacre. In Russia, Joyce and Murray overpower Yuri and get a crash course in flying a plane. At the Creel house, the crew investigate the flickering lights and determine that Vecna is likely nearby in the Upside Down. Vecna is otherwise occupied though, as he has his sights set on his next victim. The jocks have now caught up with Eddie, who is making his escape in a rowboat, but before they can catch him, one of the jocks is possessed and killed, opening another gateway under the water. 11 awakes and attempts to make another escape, this time with explosive consequences. But Dr. Brenner reminds her of the importance for her to be there, and she agrees to continue with the experiment. The military, meanwhile, are becoming increasingly desperate to get their hands on 11. The police begin investigating the death on the lake, and the crew informs Eddie that he is likely to be blamed again. And they would be correct, as Jason tries to get the whole town involved on his Munson hunt. The van crew think of an idea to track 11 down and locate Susie, who gives them some coordinates. Joyce and Murray rethink their plan and hide out with Yuri as their captive. 11 has just as much luck with the kids in Hawkins' lab as she did with the kids in California, but cannot shake the images of their dead bodies. The Hawkins crew head to the lake to see if they can find any further leads, and Steve gets pulled into the underwater gateway, trapping him in the Upside Down. He is promptly joined by Eddie, Nancy and Robin, who help him to fight off Vecna's demo bats before venturing further into the unknown. Murray sneaks into the Russian base, pretending Joyce and Yuri are the Americans they were promised, and they witness Hopper and his fellow prisoners preparing to face a familiar foe. Dustin, Lucas and Erica try to find a way to get Steve and company out of the Upside Down, who have meanwhile figured out a way to use light to communicate. They think of a way they could escape by having them meet at one of the gateways that have opened, and both crews head there immediately. In Hawkins' lab, Peter befriends 11 and lets her in on the secret to escaping the lab. Hopper and Enzo face the Demogorgon, but Murray takes one of the guards hostage to force them to save them. Once safe, Hopper turns around to find Joyce waiting for him. In the Upside Down, both crews meet up at the gateway, whilst 11 and Peter's escape plan is foiled, but Peter is not who he appears to be. Those in the Upside Down climb out of there, but Nancy is caught just before she can escape, and finds herself an observer in Vecna's memories, showing that the child of Victor Creel was the cause of the events that occurred to them, leaving Victor the one being blamed. 11 follows Peter through the lab and now sees the true reason the massacre occurred. 11 tries to stop Peter, who fights back but ultimately is overcome by 11, who banishes him to the Upside Down, and Vecna's true identity is revealed. Those that escape the Upside Down desperately try to get Nancy back, who narrowly escapes Vecna before waking up. In Russia, Hopper, Joyce, Murray and Enzo regroup and try to find a way out of the prison, whilst the Demogorgon is on the prowl. While searching the prison, they find other creatures from the Upside Down that are being kept on the premises, before they find a way out. 11's powers have officially returned thanks to the revelation she had about her past and Vecna. Meanwhile, Jonathan, Argyle, Mike and Will are headed to the coordinates they were given. On their way, Will gives Mike a painting he has been working on, which represents Mike being the hero of the group, and that everyone stands behind him. Will's feelings appear to be deeper than what he's letting on, and he's not telling Mike the whole truth. Nancy tells the gang what she saw whilst in Vecna's mind, and 11 now has the ability to telepathically see what the group is doing and saying. The Russian crew finally escapes the prison and they force Yuri to help them escape the country, as he has another aircraft that may be able to help them. In Hawkins, the gang realise they're going to need more firepower to face Vecna and steal an RV to head to a gun store. On the way, Steve confesses that he has always had feelings for Nancy, despite their complicated history. And Lucas and Max are slowly warming to each other. Yuri reveals his aircraft is actually a worn-down helicopter that is unlikely to get them anywhere, let alone out of the country, but Yuri promises to get it fixed up in no time. At the gun store, Robin sees a friendly face in Vicky, but is hurt by seeing her with a guy. Nancy, however, sees a not-so-friendly face as Jason is there, and threatens the group before they make a quick getaway and prepare for war. In Nevada, the group finds tracks which may lead to 11, but they're not the only ones that have found the location. Wanting to save her friends in Hawkins, 11 tries to leave the facility again, but is stopped by Dr. Brenner. She wakes up back in her room in the facility, which is now being breached by the military. Dr. Owens is taken captive and Dr. Brenner takes 11 out a back exit and into the Nevada desert. However, they're spotted by a military helicopter and Brenner is shot down. Just before shooting 11, Argyle's van is spotted heading their way to rescue 11, but it would appear she does not need much help. 11 is reunited with the group and says her last goodbyes to Papa, before narrowly escaping the military. Back in Hawkins, the crew is split up in their plan to defeat Vecna. Max, Erica and Lucas head into the Creel house. Meanwhile, Yuri is secretly sabotaging the repair of the helicopter. Jordan and Eddie head into the Upside Down whilst 11 thinks of an idea to help with Vecna. By telepathically travelling there through Max's memories, all she needs is a salt bath to do so. At the Creel house, they are using lanterns to help hunt Vecna. Max and Lucas decide to go on a date once this is all over, before being interrupted by Vecna. With the salt bath complete, 11 telepathically finds Max in the Creel house, who has fallen victim once again to Vecna's curse. Eddie performs a face-melting guitar solo, which does exactly what they'd planned it to do. As Nancy, Steve and Robin enter the Creel house in the Upside Down, the jocks finally catch up to Erica, Lucas and Max, who is being stalked by Vecna. Lucas and Erica attempt to fight off the jocks and Vecna arrives at the Snowball to meet Max, but they're not alone. Eddie lures the bats away as far as possible and Dustin re-enters the Upside Down to assist him, and Eddie stands his ground. 11 fights Vecna but is thrown into his memories alongside Max. Vecna tells the story of how he came to do the Mind Flayer's bidding. Hawkins has fallen. The entire group is reunited and Max is seen recovering in hospital from her injury, and Robin and Vicky get a chance to talk. Dustin tells Eddie's uncle that he's not coming home, and the story of bravery that led to his death. Back at Hopper's cabin, 11 is visited by someone and now is the beginning of the end.